All right. We back for the 6th week. I think the 6th week we've been on this. It's chapter 15, IDU and going back to court. So we've been reading through my autobiography. I think the last chapter
16.
was Indiana State Prison. I wasn't on for that one, but I did go back and listen to the recording that was uploaded to YouTube. Just a rehash of that. It was me going. I think one of the highlights for me is at the very beginning when I leave Wabash Valley, the shoe, which was a Supermax. I did uh, 23 and 1, like all the time you locked in the cell by yourself and you have no access to real meaningful human contact. And I was speaking about how when I first got to Indiana State Prison, how I realized the psychological and emotional torture that I endured those 3 years, minus 35 days I was in general population on the shoe. Uh, I was talking about how I like when I talk, like I didn't really connect to my voice. I really felt disassociated with my body. You know what I mean? These are the type of psychological torture techniques that they do every day with prisoners in these supermax prisons across the country. You know what I mean? And it's kind of scary. And I even talked about it. I was like, man, whoever thinks that they gonna be in a situation where they don't feel like they connected to their body, like that's some real psychological torture. You know what I mean? So they went from beating always having to do physical torture to mental torture and psychological torture and stuff like that. And these are some of the ways that they try to break people down and break them as individuals and stuff. You know what I'm saying? I saw some of the most strongest people lose their mind. I've seen some people on the shoe commit suicide and stuff, but this is what they're doing and across the country that a lot of people don't see is hidden. But that's one of the highlights I wanted to emphasize in that chapter because it took me like 6 months to really bounce back and feel one with myself again, which is crazy. Uh, uh, I think I talked about how I found out what they was doing to people in them units with this book called "The Law Is a White Dog: How Legal Rituals Make and Unmake Persons" by Colin. That book was one of the first books I read. How it talked about the psychological torture that they do to people on those units and stuff. So if this is happening to you, or if you went through this, that's a book that you'll probably want to read so you understand like what they was doing to us in there. You know what I mean? What's another thing I spoke about? I think that was also a chapter where I was talking about identity politics and how the Black Panther Party uh, they helped me get beyond that pretty quick. So I didn't go through the nationalist stage like a lot of people go through. I think most people go through the nationalist stage. I kind of bypassed that because of the original Black Panther Party and them linking me up to Marx, Lenin, Mao, Franz Fanon. So I started to develop from the jump a proletariat internationalist outlook on life. You know what I mean? I spoke about Asada Shakur, her autobiography, and how she was the first one to really help me understand that the Civil War wasn't even about freeing the slaves. Not really. It's one social economic system. The class. It was a class struggle amongst the upper class. It was a struggle for the control and direction of this country by the slave owning class and the capitalist class. That's what it was about. Adam Smith was one of the first people that told me after I read his book that the social economic system of chattel slavery was actually an inferior system to capitalism. So, and the capitalists understood that if they wanted to become a dominant world empire, you know what I mean, they would have to do away with slavery in order to maximize the means of production. You know what I'm saying? That's what it was about. And we need to be telling the people this instead of these false notions that Abraham Lincoln was some Martin Luther King type of individual, which he wasn't. He was a white supremacist. You know what I mean? I encourage anybody read. I want to say that's the fourth speech that he had during the Senate, when he was running for Senate. It's called the Lincoln Douglas debates. September 1858. I think it was his fourth speech. Check that out. You'll think you listen to Donald Trump. You know what I mean? But those are some of the highlights in there. I don't know if anybody else wanted to speak to some of the other highlights around that chapter 14, Indiana State Prison. Sister Anna, Alyssa, anybody? And then we'll just go from there.
Hey, Black Power and all power to people.
All right,
I thank you, Brother Kwame. I just want to say, first and foremost, happy solar return to a great leader, Dr. Huey P. Newton.
Absolutely.
As far as chapter 14, you put me in awe. You are a strong man to overcome your circumstances. In regarding, to being detained, like you have mentioned, you never know a situation where you've seen the strongest individuals who broke down, and it's mind over matter. This is a very sensitive topic because to be detained doesn't mean that you have to be brutally tortured. It's not a form of reform. But like Brother Ched has said, what is reform when it's dealing with prison? You cannot reform prison, but you need to get rid of it. It doesn't help to rehab anyone, especially under this sadistic ruling, dealing with capitalism, dealing with control in order to destroy. As we see, we need to fight. We need a campaign against these type of brutality that's happening. And by that happening, can you imagine the health situation where now, the prisons, the private prisons are using a lot of detainee health situation as a death sentence by denying them of their medications, not seeking the needed help that they need, mentally tormenting them. Isolation is not the way, and we need to do something against it. And I thank you, brother, for addressing this situation where unfortunately it had happened to you, as well as our brother Chad. So I thank you for this opportunity and allowing us to see the light of this and campaigning against what is not only denying the rights for you, but is denying people the human rights that everyone deserves.
Thank you, my sister. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. That's the whole purpose of this whole book, like to expose what really goes on in there. A lot of people be going off of these rap songs and stuff, and they have no idea it's nothing like a rap song. That's not no place that anybody would want to be in or have to go through. You know what I mean? So to all the ones that got people in prison, stay in touch with your. That's a big thing. You know what I mean? That's why I talked about the visits and letters and all that stuff that kept me grounded. Reading books that kept me grounded. uh, really gave me a strong fortitude of mind. That's really what kept my mind the most sane and strong is reading books.
I
You know,
wanted to ask you, brother, when you was in isolation, what was the one thing that kept you motivated, that kept you grounded? What is the number one thing that you can say?
yeah, that's what I was saying. Like the books, reading and educate myself, and I already knew I was gonna do this in there. Like I used to walk
Mm.
uh and it really wasn't a dog cage because it was concrete everywhere. All you could do is look up and see the sky. You know what I mean? Like I used to walk around and uh act like I was giving a speech to a crowd and stuff about what our generation got to do and stuff. You know what I mean? Like I woke
Mm.
up reading a book and I had like a regiment, you know what I mean? Like I read, take notes, write, you know what I mean? And I always was trying to pick the next book that I needed to read so I can come out here and educate people out here. You know what I mean? Go ahead.
Mm. One of the things that kept me going in prison was the fact that I believed in what I was doing. I had a firm conviction in what I was doing, and I always look back at freedom fighters of the 40s and 30s, how they sacrificed their lives for the people. So when I was in interrogation, just like the brother was, I always looked at that. I looked at Abiso Campo, who was tortured, brutally tortured, and his whole body, when he came home, his whole body was burned. They used some kind of technique meant to burn his body. And so I looked at that, and I looked at them sisters, man, that fought in struggles, man, and gave up their lives, you know. And I also looked at the Black Panthers, how they were being killed in the streets, you know. So all that gave me the strength and the courage to maintain my sanity. Because if I would have been political at that time, believe it, I would have been dead.
Comrade Che. Yeah, so I hope this this is I'm about to get into another chapter about some of the struggles that goes on inside there. And then be over to the littlest things that you fight for, which is standing up for your humanity. And that's what this chapter about to get into. Like a very small occurrence that we stand up for, but it was a necessary thing that we had a stand up for in there. Um, Lisa, do you got the statement of unity in front of you?
I was actually going to say I don't have my normal setup today, but I do have the chapter in front of me.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll go over the statement of unity and then we'll jump right into the chapter. Let me set this real quick. All right. All right, I'm about to go to the statement of unity. I'm gonna read that. And thanks for holding me down last week, listen. I don't think I was on last week. I wasn't on last week, was I?
No, but sister did a marvelous job. She
Yeah.
did a outstanding job.
Thank you.
Yeah. uh, this following week, because I think we're gonna be in Chicago with the Vice Lords and stuff. So might need you hold me down one more. But I think that might be the last one though.
Okay, that works.
I'm sorry. I just want to say that our sister, Veronica, would not be able to join us for the next 2 weeks. And Elder Leslie and I, we were looking for moderators. Anybody interested in joining us? I appreciate it.
All right. All right, I'm about to jump in the preface. I'll probably be on there Sunday, Sister Anna. All right. So this is the preface of the Statement of Unity. Is the U.S. was founded as a colonial settler state based upon white supremacy and slavery, stealing the lands of the indigenous nations, breaking every treaty made with them, and confining them to reservations, concentration camps. As the country became more powerful, the eagle sunk his claws into other nations, making war on Mexico and grabbing its northern territory, invading Cuba, Puerto Rico, Hawaii, and the Philippines, and either annexing them outright or making them colonies or neo-colonies. And in the 20th century, it became the major imperialist power of the world, exploiting both the people within its boundaries and those in every other country, bullying them with military interventions and robbing them of their right to self-determination. As Huey P. News stated, we have two enemies to fight, racism and capitalism. Between the two, capitalism is primary, racism is a byproduct of capitalism. The working people of the world of every ethnicity or nationality face a common enemy that is destroying life on Earth. Our enemy is a small ruling class of property owners controlling most of the world's wealth and resources. We must have our basic needs met to live a good and meaningful life: food, shelter, health, care, education, freedom from oppression by the state, and peace with other nations. To obtain these essential things for life, we must have the power to see to it that the abundance that is available is shared equitably. Statement of Unity for the Second Rainbow Coalition. The legacy of the First Rainbow Coalition dates back to its founding on April 4th, 1969 by the original Black Panther Party, original Young Lords, and Young Patriots organization. A number of other organizations joined this coalition not too long afterwards, such as the American Indian Movement, Brown Berets, Rising Up Angry, the Red Guards, and others. Since the founding of the United States, the masses have developed a number of popular movements that came together to fight back against this capitalist imperialist system in various ways around particular demands. Nevertheless, none had established a movement quite like the First Rainbow Coalition. This historic movement was the first of its kind that established a model of class struggle like no other. Its charismatic leader, Chairman Fred Hampton of the Illinois chapter of the Black Panther Party, stated that at the end of the day, we weren't engaged in a race struggle. He said that it's a class struggle, goddammit. By uniting with the various oppressed ethnicities and masses, they were able to bridge the gap between the various ethnic communities that white supremacy had long sought to keep divided. This class solidarity equipped them with the material basis and class consciousness to see their common class condition, therefore the necessity to form a united front against their common class oppressor, the capitalist imperialist ruling class. The ruling class viewed this as the greatest threat to their class rule and subsequently used the entire repressive forces of the state, that is the police, courts, jails, prisons, and intelligence agencies, etc., in order to crush this emerging revolutionary socialist movement. We refounded the Rainbow Coalition on May 14, 2021, with the intent of upholding the original Rainbow Coalition. We believe that this historic example is the model for the United Front that will best serve our class liberation. By upholding the 10-point program of the original Black Panther Party, which was subsequently adopted and later expanded by the original Young Lords, Young Patriots organization, and all other original Rainbow Coalition members, we established our programmatic unity. The 6 disciplinary rules that we uphold ties all organizations in our coalition to a common professional discipline. History has bestowed upon our generation a common class mission to fulfill. The representatives of the capitalist imperialist ruling class, represented by the Democratic Party and Republican Party, cannot liberate us. It is their class intention and interest to uphold our class oppression. Therefore, it is only we, the oppressed masses of all ethnicities and nationalities, who must build the revolutionary class solidarity, class consciousness, and organizational structures, and a united front that will ultimately liberate ourselves. This is what the Second Rainbow Coalition is committed to. This is the historic mission we intend to fulfill. Dare to struggle, dare to win. All power to the people, boots on the ground. All members of the coalition is the New African Black Panther Party, White Panther Party, Green Party of New Jersey, Poor People's Army, La Mesa Nacional de Brown Berets, Fury, which is feminist uprising to resist inequality and exploitation. NASO, which is North Alabama School for Organizers, New Era Young Lords, and Guardian Rebellion. The six rules of the six disciplinary rules is one, coalition. The members will conduct themselves in a manner to bring credit to the coalition and will treat others with respect and politeness. Two, members will be sober when on Rainbow Coalition business and will not engage in any criminal activity while a member. Three, no member will engage in violence except in the extremity of self-defense. Four, members will not gossip nor be divisive to the unity of the Second Rainbow Coalition. Five, members will not act as informers nor work against the purpose of the Second Rainbow Coalition. And six, nobody is authorized to speak for the Second Rainbow Coalition unless authorized to do so. So with that said, we're going to be on chapter 15, IDU, and going back to court. If it's the new book, it's on page 167. If you got the older version, which I don't think nobody on here got the older version. I don't know what page it's on, but I know a difference in pages a little bit. So I'm gonna kick this off, and then if anybody else wanna pick up after that, Sign B is on. All right. So I'm gonna wait till Zombie she connected to the Matrix. So you got on right in time. We actually right now just starting the chapter. We on chapter 15, IDU.
Oh, okay, good.
All right, so I'm about to start. It says, I don't think I can, let me see. I think I can share it to my screen. Screen share. Start broadcasting. So I probably just read. Can y'all see my screen? Y'all see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Well, I'm gonna do that then. I'm gonna read from this. So give me a little bit so I can scroll back. Oh, we almost there already. All right, I'm gonna read from here. Everybody see that?
Yeah.
All right. After I went to Conduct Adjustment Board, aka CAB, they gave me 6 months on disciplinary segregation for the battery write-up that I had gotten for whooping that on D East. They had recently opened the disciplinary segregation unit back up in I cell house after being renovated and had moved all the prisoners on 500 range on D East there. So I was transported to that unit to serve out my segregation time as well. IDU had two sides, the left side and the right side, with two tiers on each. I don't remember how many cells were on each range, but every range was divided by a gate. So each side had 4 rec groups of about 12 prisoners who were wrecked and take showers together. Like every disciplinary segregation unit in prison, we were only allowed a bare minimum of our personal property. We weren't permitted to order food off a commissary. For most part, I continued doing what I was already accustomed to doing throughout my time in prison, reading books on all kinds of subjects and dialoguing with prisoners. My guy CC had already made his way to Michigan City before I arrived there myself. Most of the time that I was on D East, he was in general population until an incident occurred where he got stabbed several times by another prisoner. They ended up sending him and the guy he had gotten into it with to IDU. They placed CC on the right side and the other guy on the left side on the same range as me. I was still very much a revolutionary, but I still had a prison mentality when it came down to a lot of stuff. Prison socially conditions you to settle beefs as if you were still a criminal in the streets. As much as you may have transformed many facets about yourself, you occasionally will find yourself being pulled back into lumpen ways. I will admit, I was very angry about my guy getting stabbed up. He could have lost his life behind circumstances that I thought should have never occurred. Initially, when I discovered they placed me on the same range with the guy who had stabbed CC, I had planned to retaliate and stab him myself. I had smuggled a prison knife with me to IDU, so I was prepared to settle that score for my friend. However, when I sent CC a kite and disclosed my tensions, he told me to stand down, and I did. When I look back at that now, I'm glad he did, because I'm sure that would have only led to a spiral of retaliatory violence with no end. This system loves it when we turn our aggression against ourselves as if we are our own enemies. At some point, we have to find other solutions besides violence to handle our differences and conflicts. I know it's hard said. I know it's harder said than done. That's why I decided to share this part of my story. Retaliatory violence is something that I found myself wrestling with at times throughout my time in prison. It's definitely hard not to retaliate. Those who were in the streets and have done time knows that sometimes the only thing the streets and guys in prison respect is violence. But as we turn prisons into schools of liberation and build dual contending power of political, social, cultural, and economic power in our community against this system, we're going to have to find ways to confront community violence and retaliatory violence that often ensues from it, or else it will become a part of the problem instead of resolving it. You could say I did this by default while on IDU with the brother GJ, who stabbed CC. The harsh and dehumanizing conditions we often found ourselves under disciplinary segregation units will force us to work together in order to solve them. I noticed after being on IDU with GJ for several weeks, he was one of the most outspoken dudes on the unit, like I was. Anytime there was a standoff between us and the correctional officers, he and I were the first prisoners to speak up and try to galvanize solidarity amongst the other prisoners in order to stand up against whatever it was we were challenging. I'm not sure if I ever found out that CC was. I'm not sure if he ever found out that CC was my guy, but I started to develop a quiet respect for GJ on that unit. When IDU first reopened, it seemed like every other week we were getting into confrontations with the correctional officers who worked on our unit. Most of them would be following orders from their superiors, but they would have to be the bearer of bad news and pay the consequences for it. I remember this time. I remember this came to this came to a head one particular day in October 2004. I don't remember the exact day, but it was reported to have been one of the coldest days of that month. I don't remember what we were on lockdown for this particular time, but I do remember what had gotten us all in an uproar. We had been on lockdown for a week. According to their own policy, every 7 days we were on lockdown, we were supposed to be given a hot tray. Now, that may not seem like much to someone who's never served time, but a hot meal usually had more calories than the same old sack lunches they would feed us every day. We can order food off of commissary, so anything that would make us suffer less from hunger pains at night was something we didn't take lightly. Besides, it was about maintaining our human dignity and the fact that anybody would get tired of eating the same shit day after day. All of us was on on IDU for violating something in their policy. They would always beat us across the head with their policy. They would say, according to policy, this is according to policy that, in order to justify the shit they would do. Well, many of us felt that we should hold them to the same policy they upheld, like the U.S. Constitution, whenever it was in our favor. We weren't going to let them use their policy against us without us using it to get what it said we were supposed to be afforded. If that meant that we would have to demonstrate and hold them accountable to it by any means necessary, then so be it. By this time in my prison bit, I had been in so many standoffs and demonstration against the guards, I was so used to it that it became second nature, becoming one of the organizing voices amongst the other prisoners. Normally, it would be a handful of us who would rally everyone else with impromptu speeches over the ranges. Besides myself, I know GJ was another influential voice that was always taking the lead and organizing the demonstrations that would come from these standoffs. As Oswald, Stevio, and a number of others would be some of the familiar voices who would step out there and try to mobilize guys on the unit. As I mentioned previously, anytime we had standouts with the guards, 9 times out of 10, the various white supremacist affiliated guys on the unit with us would be right there with the rest of us making demands, giving impromptu speeches to rally the other prisoners and actively participating in the demonstrations. At those times, there was no difference between us. That's the closest we would come to uniting into a real class struggle against the prison regime. At those moments, it was us against them, prisoners versus guards. I didn't know much about the original Rainbow Coalition that Deputy Chairman Fred Hampton had initiated April 4th, 1969, but I realized through social struggle how strong.
I'm trying to figure about what? About what?
Huh?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I didn't know much about the original Rainbow Coalition that Deputy Chairman Fred Hampton had initiated April 4th, 1969. But I realized through social struggle how strong of a material force we were when the prison population united and formed a united front against the prison regime. We were a lot more effective in forcing the prison regime to bend to our will. But groups like the Aryan Nation, Aryan Circle, Saxon Knights were limited by their fascist ideology. They understood in prison that they had more in common with the oppressed minorities in prison because they would get their asses beat by the prison guards just like we would. They would be sent to segregation for years and experience sensory deprivation just like the rest of us. They would ransack their cells during shakedowns and be regularly dehumanized by the guards as well. But somehow they would still cling to their white skin as if it was something that was sacred and necessary to uphold. This is why alliances with them were very limited. Outside of prison, we all knew we stood at odds with each other. They would revert back to their fascist ideologies in the end and ultimately be co-opted by the very repressive forces of people who had oppressed them while in prison. This is why we say it's necessary for white people in the lower class to commit race suicide in order to be a part of the revolution. We're not fighting for one ethnicity to reign supreme over all others. We're fighting to end all forms of supremacy of any ethnicity because at the end of the day, as Fred Hampton said, it's a class struggle, God damn it. This particular standoff with the guards reached its apex for me when the guards opened the window and threatened to strip us all down to our boxers and t-shirts. It was so cold outside that I already knew I wasn't gonna let them take my prison issue clothes, leaving me to freeze in silence. Like always, we trashed all the ranges and started setting fires to them. We did that by trashing the range with everything we were willing to get rid of, while others started spraying baby oil on the trash on the range. Baby oil is actually very flammable. As far as where we got the fire to light the trash, well, let's just say there are many ways prisoners light stuff. I wasn't one of those that lit the stuff on fire, but getting a fire started isn't hard at all. I mostly trashed the area around my cell and sprayed baby oil on it to help out. My contribution, as always, was my agitation. I found myself giving these impromptu speeches as very important contributions to these demonstrations. It's a lot of us on each of these ranges, and these motherfuckers only have a few more hours before they go home. What we have on our side that they don't is time. I don't know about anybody else, but I'm not letting them come into my cell and take my clothes. This is the coldest day of this month, and they call themselves opening up all the windows to freeze us out. And what are we fighting for? We're fighting for something that their policy said we're supposed to have. It's not like we're making unnecessary demands. Nah, we simply want to be given what their policy says we're supposed to be to get after being on lockdown for 7 days. Well, it's been 7 days, goddamn it, and we want our hot trays. We told them this earlier in the day, and we're supposed to get our hot trays. They want to wait until the last minute to get this straight, and now feed us the same nasty old cold sack lunches. Nah, fuck that. I say we waste their time. They were going cell by cell, taking guys out, removing their clothes from their cells. I'm watching this occur, but kept right on trying to win people over to my stance. There's probably 100 cells on this IDU and another 100 guys on the other side. If we all decide not to cuff up and force them to forcibly remove us from our cells, we will waste their time and make them rethink this bullshit. Who's with me? A few guys said they would refuse to cuff up and force the goon squad to run in on them. But in the end, I think only 2 other guys had held strong to the end. When they got to myself and told me to cuff up, they already knew. Go get suited up. I'm not coming out of my cell. Well, if you want it like that, we will just come and remove you. Well, you gotta do what you gotta do, but I'm not letting y'all strip me down to my boxers and t-shirts when y'all just open all the windows to freeze us out. So do what you gotta do, motherfucker. All right, we can do it your way, the sergeant said, standing at my cell. Let's go get suited up. After they left, I went and got a whole bottle of shampoo and baby oil and emptied it all over the cell floor in front of my cell. I wanted to make it slippery as possible for them. As I waited for them to come back, a few prisoners tried to convince me to cuff up. As well intentioned that I'm sure they were, I wasn't trying to hear anything about cuffing up. Even CC yelled through the vent that connected to the other side and tried to talk me down, but I wasn't trying to hear him either. At first, you had a lot of guys saying they were going to refuse to cuff up, but as they started to go cell by cell, guys started to cuff up. Instead of me getting discouraged, it made me more determined, especially to hear the other 2 dudes were holding their line too. After a while, I stopped talking and just waited for the goon squad to return. When they finally did, it was like 45 minutes later. Think about that. I had wasted 45 minutes of their times just by myself. Imagine if all 100 prisoners on that unit made them run in on them too. I'm sure they would have reconsidered doing that. As strong as some of the demonstrations may initially start off, it was normally the most hardcore elements that held on out the longest. Unfortunately, most of them complied during this standoff we had with them. We're going to give you 3 seconds to comply or we're coming into that cell and extract you, the sergeant said, standing at the front of my cell. Shit, what are you waiting for? I said with a stern look on my face. Never before had I allowed the goon squad to run in on me. I knew I wouldn't prevail against 6 men suited up in what amounted to riot gear. They were trained for moments like this, but I was making a statement to the guards and the rest of the prisoners. We shouldn't be afraid to stand up for what was right. We were simply demanding something that we were supposed to be given. I figured when we found ourselves in a standoff again, I would have more than 2 other prisoners who would go the distance with me. I wasn't just giving impromptu speeches, asking people to make a sacrifice I wasn't also willing to make. I was willing to make those type of sacrifices if need be myself. When they rolled my cell door, all 6 members of the goon squad flooded in my cell. The first guard in, I super punched him in the helmet and then started struggling against the rest of them taking me down. I probably struggled with them for about 10 seconds before they managed to get my face down on my bed. One of them put me in a neck choke that stopped me from breathing. The same hold the police used on Eric Gardner's years later in New York on July 17, 2014, which killed him. I was so stubborn that I didn't tap any of their arms or anything. I figured if they was gonna choke me out, then that's what they were gonna have to do. But I wasn't gonna plead with them. After about 10 seconds, the guard who was choking me released his hold around my neck. They eventually cuffed me and led me away to another lockdown unit called SMU. They might have ran in on me, but I was one of 3 people that night that didn't go to sleep in my boxers and t-shirts. All right, you want to pick up from there, Alyssa?
Sure.
Oh,
Alright.
I
All
just
right.
thought
Oh,
this
go
man,
ahead.
if somebody tries to get on, I don't even know if I can see him. Yeah, well, maybe I hear him try to get in. All right, go ahead.
All right. I stayed on SMU for about 3 days before they brought me back to IDU. When I came back, I didn't talk much to anybody. I was really angry that so many of them had left me hanging. Nevertheless, I did gain a lot of their respect. The next time we had a standoff with the guards, a lot more guys were open to my suggestions and following through with me. We never had a standoff quite like that one again because the guards made sure we got our hot trays up after 7 days every time after that. I think I ended up getting 3 more months behind that incident, if I'm not mistaken, for resisting, but I didn't care. That was all part of the struggle. Around the beginning of December 2004, I was ordered to pack up so they could transport me back to the county jail in Indianapolis. They didn't have to tell me twice. I was ready to leave IDU for a while. I was going back to the county jail for my post-conviction relief hearing that I was representing myself pro se on. Post-conviction relief, also known as PCR, is kind of like a second appeal phase. It's considered a quasi-civil matter, but in layman's terms, it's the second phase in my appeal process after you lost your direct appeal. Since the Indiana Supreme Court denied my direct appeal after the Indiana Supreme Court of Appeals had initially granted it, I had to re-raise my main issue under ineffective assistance of trial and what's that word?
Appellate.
Appellate counsel. My former appellate counsel, Kathleen M. Sweeney, was just as mad about my direct appeal being denied as I was. The Indiana Supreme Court said she forgot to include one part of my transcript during my direct appeal, so they couldn't decide my case. Instead of letting her submit that missing document, they forced me to file a PCR. I initially was appointed a public pretender for my PCR, but she and I didn't see eye to eye. Most people didn't get a public pretender to do their post-conviction, but I was given one because the appellate courts suggested that they may give me relief. So the public pretender's office had initially appointed me someone. However, I had gotten to the point that if a public pretender or lawyer wasn't showing me they were on their shit, I would have no problem representing myself pro se. I didn't want to have to do that, especially for my PCR, but she left me with no option. She was unwilling to simply investigate my biggest concern. I wanted to know if the prosecutor had offered me a 20-year plea bargain. Did I say that right? I wanted
Yeah.
to know if the prosecutor had offered me a 20-year plea bargain. If so, and my trial public pretender hadn't informed me about it, then she had violated my Sixth Amendment right and had provided me ineffective assistance of counsel. According to the law, that meant they would have have to, what is that? Resentence. Oh, wow. Okay. I'll be all right. Have to resentence me and give me a chance to take that 20-year plea bargain. For me, that meant that my sentence would have gone from 39 years to 20. Since I had done close to 7 years in prison, that meant I would only have a few more years to do if I did 50% of my time. For someone who was supposed to be representing me, but wouldn't even investigate something that fundamental to my case, became too much of a conflict of interest for me. Now, I wasn't sure I had in fact been offered a 20-year plea bargain, but there were a number of things that had occurred that made me suspect that I had. For one, my very first paid lawyer, Hillary Bo Ricks, told me that she could get me a 20-year plea bargain and was sure of it. I ended up firing her because she would never answer my calls or come and see me. The public pretender they gave me asked me right before my trial if I would take a 20-year plea bargain. She asked me not as if the prosecutor had sent her back to talk to me, but as if this is what she was going to try to obtain for me. I didn't tell her outright no. I told her to see if he would give me a 20-year plea and cap it off at 10 years. So all I would have to do was 5 years in prison instead of 10. She got mad and stormed off. When I asked her if he offered a plea bargain right before trial, she said, "There ain't no plea bargain." I had always suspected that the prosecutor had actually offered a 20-year plea. I just needed written proof somewhere he had. To this day, I still don't know. The whole 2.5 hour drive back to Indianapolis, the sheriffs who were transporting us back to Marion County Jail were playing all the 90s classic songs. There was one song that they played that made all of us in the transport van reflect on our own lives the most. Life Goes On by Tupac Shakur. It was the only song they played that all of us asked the sheriffs to play again. I had listened to that song many times before on the streets, but this was the first time it had hit me in a different type of way, especially the second verse. When that verse played again, I stared out the window and thought about the lyrics and how it related to my own life in silence. Yeah, I'm not saying that word. I got the word as hell. You blew trial and the judge gave you 25 with an L. Time to prepare to do Fed time. Won't see parole. Imagine life as a convict. That's getting old. Those lyrics of Pac swirled around in my head and made me think about what my life had been like the past 6.5 years. The 39 years the judge had given me felt like life. I was growing old in the penitentiary. If I ended up doing half my time, I would be damn near 40, growing old in the joint. No words of Pac had touched me more poignantly than those. When we got to the county jail, they gave us our orange jumpsuits and placed me back in one of the murder robbery cell blocks. I came across a number of guys I either knew from back in the days or had done time with in county jail before. It always it always surprised me to run across individuals who seemed to live half their lives in county jail. Every time I went back to county jail, they would be in there fighting another case after just beating a different one. All the COs knew them as well as the prison population. Nobody exemplified that more than Sweets. He stayed in the county jail. When they placed me in 2P, he was the first person I saw. He was still the same Sweets, trying to bully everybody. That was his MO. We all knew about the story of him when he tried to fight when he tried to fight Mike Tyson when they were both doing time at IYC. I had heard it so many times that it seemed like I had witnessed it myself. They said Sweets tried to egg Mike Tyson on to fight him. They said Mike told Sweets, "All I'm going to do is whop your ass, and then you're gonna sue me." The first time I heard that story, I laughed hysterically because I could see Sweets confronting Mike and Mike telling him in a nonchalant voice and manner, or telling him that in a nonchalant voice and manner. I was just glad to be away from IDU so I could eat commissary and go to sleep full, at least while I was there. I don't think I was there for more than a day or two before they came and got me and went to court. My hearings would normally be in my original trial courtroom, but they told us that they had trial in there this particular day. So they led our chain gang to the bullpen behind courtrooms 2 and 4. Courtroom 2 also had a trial underway, so my PCR hearing was held in courtroom 4. Even though my case was set to be heard, I had already planned on asking for a continuance. I needed a little more time to prepare my case. When they finally got around to my case, the bailiff who escorted everybody to court came and got me and led me to my seat. I first brought it to the judge's attention that I would need a continuance. From the very start, I could tell that this judge didn't respect me just from her tone and how she worded her words. I'm sure she probably treated every pro se litigant that way. I don't think a lot of judges in these courtrooms respect people who represent themselves. I'm sure many people feel like we're uppity. I'm not saying that either. I don't know who don't know our place whenever we use their laws to challenge their decisions. However she felt about me, I tried my best to hold my composure to do what I needed to do while I was there. And that's what I did. I submitted written motion to the judge and asked for a continuance. She granted it, but told me the next time I was brought back to court, PCR proceedings would go forward. I acknowledged that and she rescheduled my hearing and the bailiff escorted me back to the bullpen. As I sat in the bullpen waiting for the other cases to be heard, I chopped it up with this guy named Kunta. He and I had gone to RDC on the same transportation van when I first came down. I was curious as to why he was back on his PCR and how good his chances were looking. He told me about a recent change in the law that said they had to give you 2 separate trials anytime they charged someone with being a serious violent felon in possession of a firearm. Whatever charge you caught in connection to that, you were supposed to get a separate trial with an entirely different jury. Since they hadn't done that in his trial, he told me that they were talking about taking 20 years off his sentence. I was really happy for him. One of the ways I learned about changes in the law was to talk to people about issues they were coming back on. Most of the time they would ask you if they knew you are currently serving time. As I was talking to Kunta though, I remember all of a sudden I had forgotten to get a copy of my motion that I had given the judge. I had given her the original one and my copy. I knew if there were only 1 or 2 cases still needing to be, I knew there were only 1 or 2 cases still needing to be heard. So I figured I would notify the sheriff deputy when he came and got the next person for court. After the bullpen door rolled and he called the next person's name, I started to ask him if he could get my paperwork from the judge, but he cut me off before I could even finish. Sit your ass down. I'm not trying to answer no questions, he said in the most rude manner. Look, I said, trying to reason with him. I'm not trying to cause any problems. He cut me off again. Like I said, sit your punk ass down. I don't remember if he said punk ass or bitch ass, but I remember he said one of those no words to me. Part of me was seething and I wanted to fuck his ass up while the logical side was telling me not to let this dickhead get to me. His last name started with a D, but I'll refer to him as as Deputy Dickhead from here on out because he was probably one of the most disrespectful people I'd ever ran across in my life. Turning and looking at Kunta, I said, this is why I don't like coming back to the county jail. You always run into one of these pigs that want to super cop. When I called him a pig in front of everybody, his face turned bright red. Come here, he bellowed. I'd spent so many years on segregation that I figured that he was just going to put me in a segregation cell somewhere. To my surprise, though, as soon as I walked past him out of the bullpen, he grabbed the back of my neck and was attempting to slam my head against the wall. Oh, shit. At that very moment, it was as if time slowed down and everything afterwards proceeded in slow motion. I remember throwing my hands out so my head didn't hit the wall. Then on instinct, I turned around and grabbed Deputy Dickhead and slammed him into the bullpen's door with a loud thud. That's when I heard Kunta above all other voices yelling, "Get him, my dude, beat his motherfucking ass." His words made me pause for what seemed like an eternity to ask myself 2 important questions. 1, did I really want to follow through with this and beat his ass behind the courtroom when I was going back to court to give back time, not to get more time? I think I said that right. And 2, how was I going to get out of this jam now that I have put my hands on this fool? Then the answer to my last question hit me. I relinquished my grip from Deputy Dickhead, ran towards courtroom 2, busted through the doors, and stopped. Here I was standing in a bright orange jumpsuit as a whole trial was on session. You could literally hear a mouse piss on cotton. I've never heard that before. You could literally hear a mouse piss on cotton in that courtroom that day. All eyes were on me. They didn't know if I was about to escape or what. I wasn't gonna leave no room for any misinterpretation as to why I had disrupted this trial proceeding. I knew I would have the whole courtroom full of witnesses who would be witnessing what I was going to say. Besides, I knew since the trial was underway, the court stenographer would have to type whatever I said just in case the defense would use this incident as a means for a new trial. So I stopped and looked directly at the judge. Oop, I went too far. Hold on. Okay. Your Honor, I said, your bailiff is back here assaulting me. Y'all need to get him. I'm not trying to cause any problems, but your bailiff attacked me for no reason. Y'all need to get him. I just kept repeating that over and over in different ways, so the record would reflect that I wasn't trying to escape and that Deputy Dickhead was the aggressor. I think at the time the only thing that everybody was thinking to themselves in that courtroom that day was, "What in the fuck?" Even the judge sat speechless. It was a very surreal moment for me anytime I reflect back on what happened that day. But at the time, I was just trying to make sure I didn't catch more time in prison. I knew they were going to charge me with something. I needed to prepare my defense now. And running off in there and getting that all on record was the start of my defense. I'm not sure how long I stood in the courtroom pleading with the judge to intervene. It seemed like an eternity, but I was probably in there for only 10 to 15 seconds before a number of bailiffs rushed in there and dragged me out of the courtroom. As soon as they got me in the hallway behind the courtroom, that's when the beatdown began. I put up a little resistance just to show them that I wasn't a pushover, but after a while I relented and let them take me to the ground. As soon as Deputy Dickhead got on top of me, he started to punch me in the face with something in his hands. The entire time he was hitting me, I was talking shit to him. You hit like a little bitch, I yelled out in between blows to my face. I guess they got tired at one point because they lifted me off the ground and led me to an elevator. The whole walk to the elevator, they were conferring amongst each other about what they were going to charge me with. One of them said they should charge me with escape, but another one spoke up and said he didn't think they should. They were all talking as if I wasn't even there. The whole time I was telling them under any other circumstances, I would fuck every last one of them up. They only looked at me with dumb looks on their face. Eventually, they took me to a segregation cell and placed me there. All I could do was think about how fucked up my day was unfolding as I laid in the bed. I was angry, I felt violated, but most important, I was wondering how I was going to get myself out of this new bullshit without procuring more time in prison.
All right, I'll take up from there. On December 8th, 2004, the state filed a misdemeanor charge of resisting law enforcement under cause number, all those numbers against me. This is what Deputy Cullen Deferbarach, aka Deputy Dickhead, actually alleged in the state's probable cause affidavit. On December the 7th, 2004 at 14:50 hours. I'm going to just keep on calling Deputy Dickhead from here on out. Deputy Dickhead, Unit 2514 of the Marion County Sheriff's Department was working in his assigned courtroom, criminal court, and was preparing to transport the last prisoner, William Morton, back to the jail so that criminal 1 could use courtroom 4 to complete their docket. Deputy Dickhead opened the doors to the holding cell to call Mr. Martin, another inmate who was later identified as Dayon Miller, a black male. Date of birth 1/2/1979. Marion County Gallery number 525821 was standing in the doorway blocking it and began yelling at Deputy Dickhead regarding documents or paperwork that he stated he needed for his case. Deputy Dickhead told the subject he was asking the wrong person and he needed to acquire with the court 1. Deputy Dickhead also told the subject at the time that he needed to be quiet as the court was in session, both in courtroom 4 and 2, to which the subject, Mr. Miller, responded still in a very loud voice, "Fuck the court, I'm about my shit." You see how they just lie like that? Deputy Dickhead ordered Miller to sit down and shut up. Inmate Miller responded still in a very loud voice, "Fuck you, you punk ass bitch. I'm a man. I'm a hard man, and you can't make me do shit." At this time, Deputy Dickhead ordered Miller to step into the foyer and informed him that he would be taking a tank to be segregated so he would not disturb the course. Mr. Miller complied with this order and stepped in the foyer. Deputy Dickhead instructed Mr. Miller to turn around with a hand gesture and motion. As Deputy Dickhead was doing so, Mr. Miller reached his hand out, smacked Deputy Dickhead's hand away, and lunged at him, knocking Deputy Dickhead's momentarily off. Deputy Dickhead grabbed Mr. Miller by his collar of his shirt, spinning him around to the door jam of the door leading to courtroom 2, pinning him momentarily against the wall. At this time, Deputy Gray, Deputy Albert, who were in courtroom 2, ran to assist, and inmate Miller was taken to the floor and handcuffed. When I read that probable cause affidavit that they had filed against me, I couldn't do anything but laugh at it. Not only was it a complete fabrication of what actually transpired, he had made up a whole story that just made me out to be this emotionally unstable person while he was a complete victim that was just doing his job. Any Black person reading this probable cause affidavit at first glance would know that it was a pig invented story. What Black person do you know say, "I'm a hard man"? A lot of words were put in my mouth to make me out to be a stereotypical aggressive nigger thug. This was clearly intended to convince other white people that I was the aggressor and he was the victim just doing his job. The fact that he left out that I had ran into the courtroom and stated on record that he had attacked me, I knew I had them. There was no way they were going to allow me to take this case in front of a jury. I had so many ways to pick their story apart, including all the depositions that I knew I could get from the other prisoners who were actually there and witnessed it. The only problem with that was knowing that they could possibly be threatened to lie in order to get a deal. But I had already thought about that. I was just going to call Kunta and maybe one other prisoner who I figured they wouldn't be able to turn. This reminds me of the definition of a pig that the original Black Panther Party had put out in their newspaper. They said that a pig is a low-nature beast that has no regard for law or justice or the rights of the people, bites the hand that feeds them, usually masquerades as the victim of an unprovoked attack. After being in the penal system and serving time in boys' school, I had already come to realize that prison guards and the police all fit this common definition of what a pig was. They didn't distinguish between so-called good cops and bad cops. It was really an indictment of the entire repressive institutions of the state. This is how these institutions actually function. It was a systematic pig culture that the original Black Panther Party was pointing out to the people. Not only was Deputy Dickhead portraying himself as a victim of an unprovoked attack, he had his pig colleagues and all the institutions of the state covering for him in this regard. They didn't respect my rights. They never did any investigation into what really happened, even though there was a bullpen full of other prisoners who had witnessed what had transpired. Do you think they took one witness statement? Absolutely not. It has never been about upholding justice and holding pigs accountable for what they do to people anytime they violate our rights. Every institution of the state will protect them and their image while demonizing ours. These direct encounters, such as this particular incident, opened my eyes to the true relationship between us and the pigs. If I was under any illusions before, they were dispelled after I'd been beaten that day and charged for something they had provoked. A friend of mine named Luck had heard about what happened to me in the county jail and decided to hire me a lawyer to fight that misdemeanor charge in my PCR. He was one of the guys in the streets who had looked up to me growing up. At the time, he was balling and had a lot of discretionary funds he could play with. I had a particular lawyer in mind initially when he had offered his help, but I ended up going with his lawyer he always had on call. I figured since it was his personal lawyer and that he had helped his crew on a case all the way in another state get off on that, he would do right by Luck, if not by me. I really did trust most lawyers by this time of my bit. I had directly or indirectly experienced the fact that majority of them really weren't in it for the right reasons. They would make you believe they were fighting for you, but 9 times out of 10, they will be taking as much money from you as possible as they did uh, as little as possible. I have seen guys pay a lawyer tens of thousands of dollars and they still got played. My position on them had become one of relying on them only as my mouthpiece. I would do my own research and even occasionally draw up my own motions. I just needed a lawyer to execute my strategy. First time I met Christopher C. Zoller in prison, I realized he was full of shit. Since he was taking over my misdemeanor case and my PCR, I immediately began filling him out when he came to visit me at the county jail for an attorney-client visit. He started off trying to impress me with his resume. He told me that he had even been a judge at one point in his career, none of which really impressed me. I wanted to know how strategic he was in applying the law and if he would be truthful with me about what he could actually do for me. On our first visit, I didn't speak a lot about the misdemeanor case with him. I just told him that I wanted a jury trial and told him that I wanted him to get witness statements from all the prisoners who were in the bullpen that day. Then I shifted the conversation to my robbery case and asked him what his goal was. He told me that he felt he could get me a new trial. He said that he thought of that both of my robbery charges should have been run together. As soon as he finished, I explained to him by quoting the law that there was no way he would be able to get me a new trial nor run both robbery convictions together. First of all, there's no way you can give me a new trial. In order to give me a new trial, I would have to present newly discovered evidence that wasn't presented at my trial. There is none. His facial expressions changed from one of confidence in what he had just told me to one of surprise that I was pretty versed in the law. I could tell from the look on his face that he didn't realize he was dealing with someone who actually studied the law and that he wouldn't be able to come to and there wouldn't be able to come in there and run all any old bullshit down to. Most lawyers could get away with telling their clients what they figured they wanted to hear. Most dudes wanted their lawyers to tell them that they were going to get them a new trial, but I already knew how extremely rare that was. So I wasn't trying to hear the bullshit. The best I could possibly get was to be resentenced if I could find the evidence that I had been offered a plea bargain I was never informed of. Now, that was clearly established in law, but I had to prove that. Yet, I still wouldn't be given a new trial, only resentenced. As far as running my robbery convictions together, I continue. According to Ferguson versus State, the single larceny doctrine says that they were correct for convicting me for two separate convictions for robbery. The Indiana Supreme Court said in that case, if I robbed a business, for instance, a bank in my case, and took money from every teller, that would be one robbery. But if a bystander was in there and I took their wallet or several people's wallets and purses, they would charge me with robbery for every person I had taken a wallet or purse from. Since I had robbed the bank and took a person's wallet, according to the law, they were correct with convicting me and sentenced me to 30 years for those. My aggravated circumstances outweighed my mitigating circumstances, so that's why they were able to give me an aggravated sentence. Where they went wrong in my case is that they charged me with criminal recklessness as a lesser included offense of attempted murder. The Indiana Court of Appeals was correct in declaring the improper and fundamental error. That was correct in declaring that an improper and fundamental error. However, since the Indiana Supreme Court didn't settle that matter, stating that they couldn't decide my case due to the fact that my appellate attorney didn't submit one piece of transcript in a record, they made this issue into an effective assistant counsel argument. So my only option is getting resentenced for being given a plea bargain. I was never told about if that's actually what had occurred. I said looking him straight in the eyes, or getting those 3 counts of criminal recklessness vacated, leaving me with 30 years. But they're definitely not going to give me a new trial. After I said what I said to him, he started to stutter and search for a rebuttal to save face. Well, he said, shifting his eyes, it looks like you researched your case extensively. I'm not familiar with that Ferguson versus state case you were referring to. Well, I can get that case law for you, and you can look it up look it up yourself. Okay, he said, realize that I wasn't that dumbass nigga he thought I would be. I will look it over and I will come up with something. A few days later, I called him and he told me he had looked over Ferguson versus State. He said after reading that case, he agreed with me and that he would be putting together another strategy soon. I got off the phone with him feeling like he was gonna either take me seriously now or I would have to just fire him and possibly get another lawyer. The judge on my PCR by this time had gotten really frustrated with me. She wanted to hear my PCR the next time I went back to court to see her and made it be known that my case would be heard regardless. But when I hired a paid lawyer, she had no choice but to continue my case again. Since I was fighting two cases, they were forced to transport me back and forth from IDU to Marion County Jail. I think I went back to court 2 other times before both cases were settled. One time I went back to stay in the county jail for nearly a month. I wasn't complaining at all since that meant I could get away from the serving disciplinary segregation time I had on IDU and be able to order food off a commissary. That was probably the most Christopher Zeller actually did for me because he kept showing me in various ways that he was selling me out. I went back to court around March 2005 and ran into my homeboy Bucket. I hadn't seen him in years. They had placed him and I in a misdemeanor holding tank along with about 10 other guys. He was fighting some case he caught in the county jail where they had jumped a guy and beat the fuck out of him. They ended up charging him behind that. This is around the time when the county started to shift how they were going to approach the violence in the jail. Before, you could nearly beat a person half to death and all you would receive was disciplinary segregation time. Now they were charging you for assault and battery, especially the person you had assaulted, pressed charges against you. I'm not sure if the guy they had jumped on pressed charges on him or the county did, but I remember him telling me what had transpired enthusiastically. He ended up breaking his hand in the altercation, but as always, from what he was telling me, I could tell that he had instigated the whole ordeal. I wasn't surprised. That's what made me look up to him when I was younger. He was a real life menace to society to me. I still had a lot of respect for him, but I noticed that in a lot of ways we were different, and I was changing for the better. He was still gang banging in the same old bucket, whereas I was a revolutionary now. I still had a lot of contradictions I would often wrestle with myself, but I no longer view people in our community as the opposition. I saw the capitalist and privilege system as my main foe, not vice lords or any other group in our community or in prison. While we were in the holding cell chopping it up and reminiscing, in walked the dope fiend that they had placed in the holding tank with us. This brother had on an orange jumpsuit like most of us. I had on a red one due to the incident that had transpired with Deputy Dickhead. So they considered me a higher security risk. When he came in and started talking though, he instantly became the butt of all jokes. What took the cake was when he revealed that he had a sheet wrapped around his ass like a diaper. That's when Bucket jumped in and started talking real bad about him. I mean, he was completely humiliating his brother. Yet the Dauphin wasn't acting intimidated by Bucket at all. Years ago, I would have taken Bucket's side and might have even been down to whoop him if he wanted to. Instead, I found myself trying to de-escalate the situation. There were a number of words exchanged, but in the end, I was able to keep the situation from getting out of hand. I didn't want to see the Dauphin beaten up for no reason, nor see Bucket catch another outside case. Instead of appreciating what I did for him, Bucket looked at me as if I became soft, as if I was becoming soft and stopped talking to me the rest of the time we were in the holding cell together. It was awkward, but honestly, I didn't care. There's a song that Nas wrote called Second Childhood. about people who stay stuck in an adolescent mindset no matter how old they get. He talks about a guy who had been released from prison after serving a long bit and now was 31 years old, but went back to the streets selling dope and doing everything he was doing before he went to prison. He said such a person was living their second childhood. In the second verse, he tells a story about a sister who is 27 years old, has kids, but still runs the street, don't take care of her kids, fuck with a different man every weekend, and never grows up. He said such a woman is living her second childhood. The older I got, I saw examples of brothers and sisters living their second childhood in diverse ways. They may have been young fools when they were coming up, but now they were like the old cliche, old fools. An old fool is nothing but a young fool grown old. They never matured and develop a worldview of life suited for growth and development. They stay stuck in a mindset that reflects arrested development. That day, that's how I started to view Bucket and all the other buckets of the world. They were still living their second childhood. When I went to see the judge for my misdemeanor case, my attorney and I stood directly in front of the judge bench. Before he rescheduled my case, I noticed that he said my case would be set for a trial, court trial, not a jury trial. I immediately spoke up and indicated I had requested a jury trial at my preliminary hearing. The judge quickly cut me off and began chastising me in front of the whole courtroom. Stop, he yelled. If you want to speak to me, you tell your lawyer what you want him to say to me. I'm not going to listen to you tell me anything. The tone of his voice was so disrespectful that it made me grow angry. I wasn't just angry at him. I was angry at my attorney for not taking up and telling him that I had requested a jury trial. If I hadn't spoken up, I'm sure he would have him set me for a bench trial. But I definitely wasn't going to sit by and let that happen. If he wasn't going to be the sole judge, if he was going to be the sole judge, who would have decided my case? I'm sure I would have been convicted of resisting law enforcement charge they were holding over my head, no matter if I was innocent or not. I figured if I forced them to take me to trial, they would end up dropping the charge because they knew it was meritless, and they didn't want to waste money on fighting a baseless case. For a split second, I thought about firing Christopher Zoller right then and there, and then turning to the judge and telling him in the most indignant tone, okay, now that I fire him, my lawyer, now that I fired my lawyer for not speaking up, I'm now representing myself. And like I said, I'm requesting a jury trial, not a bench trial. And that's what I want. Instead of doing that, though, I turned to my attorney and said very loudly so everyone in the courtroom could hear me, I want you to tell this judge that I told them at my preliminary hearing I wanted a jury trial. After I said that, I turned back to the judge and looked at him like, now what? He was incensed, but he knew he couldn't do anything about it, but set a new jury trial for me. One thing I learned from that misdemeanor case was that a person must request a jury trial at their preliminary hearing. You don't have a right to a jury trial for a misdemeanor case like you do on a felony one. I didn't realize that until I read all the paperwork right before my preliminary hearing. I watched so many public pretenders convince guys to take plea bargains or have their cases heard by a judge alone that I refused to make the same mistake they were making. A number of them I was sure was innocent of the misdemeanor case that they had been charged with. They would come back from court crying about how they've been railroaded or that they've been forced to sign plea bargains even though they were innocent. Not only wasn't I going to allow them to do me the same way, I wanted all of them to know that I wasn't going to allow the same to happen to me. It would address them in the same disrespectful tone in which they talked to me. I'm sure that judge hated me after that day, but I didn't give a fuck. I knew I had placed him in a dilemma. A few months later, as I correctly predicted, the court dismissed the resisting law enforcement charge. As far as my PCR, I didn't fare as well. I should have followed my instinct and fired Christopher Zoller. This motherfucker didn't even submit my trial transcripts into evidence, nor called any witnesses. So there was no way the judge could even decide my case. Even my appellate public defender told me that she would gladly testify for me at my PCR hearing. But she didn't like how the court had played her either, but he didn't even subpoena her. Not submitting my trial transcript into evidence was akin to someone trying to get into college, but not submitting their high school transcripts. Some real unthinkable shit. I could have knocked his ass out right there in the courtroom when they dismissed my case. I was so shitty, I knew I was playing. I was so shitty because I knew he was playing me all along. But then again, I knew the old cliche. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. He had shown me on numerous occasions that he was playing me, but I couldn't bring myself to fire him in the end. And I even had my guy Luck go to the office to confront him about the shit. He played with both of us that he was going to do right by by me on both of the cases he was in charge of. I didn't believe him. I was just exhausted with fighting around this time and didn't really want to possibly represent myself again. I knew my chances of giving any time back had dropped exponentially, if not altogether. After losing my PCR, more so, I slipped into a deep bout of depression because I was angry with myself for allowing myself to be played. All right, stop sharing. And that's the end of that chapter right there. I hope nobody was trying to get on. Live broadcast of Zoom and stop. Do you have stop screen share? Okay. Yeah. All right. So that's the end of that chapter. I know that was kind of eventful, very action packed. I think one of the things about that chapter, to this day, I still be like tripped out that that I ran off into that courtroom. that was like one of the most surrealist moments. Like I did not see that coming when that pig came in, tried to throw my head up against the wall, and I had to on instinct react quickly, and figure out a way out that situation. You know what I mean? He really caught me in a time in my life when I was least thinking and trying to go home and trying to figure out how to get back time. But it's times, boy, if he would have caught me early in my bit, man, I might not be here today because I was like looking for an opportunity to get out of prison. You know what I mean? And this dude,
definition fight or flight right there.
yeah. And this dude got a 40 caliber pistol on his side, and I manhandled him so easily. Like, if he would have caught me at a wrong time in my life in prison in the even earlier days and stuff, I don't know. Who's to say? I might have would have took his pistol and popped his ass right there, you know what I mean, and try to make an escape. Because I was tired of that shit by the time all this happened. I had already been through all kind of bullshit, seen all kind of crazy stuff, being psychologically tortured, jumped on, you know what I mean? Like I was like really, if it wasn't me thinking like I want to get out and join the movement and destroy this system, you know what I mean? That's what drove me too. Like people ask me like, what kept you strong and stuff. It was me knowing like I'm about to defeat these motherfuckers when I get out here. I am not just gonna beat one police officer up. I'm not just gonna stab one of them up. I'm gonna come out here and organize all the people, and we gonna to have a revolution in this motherfucker. You know what I'm saying? And this how I could really get back at these motherfuckers. That's what drove me. You know what I mean? Or if I would have been more individually minded, I probably would have possibly lost my life that day. You know what I mean? Because I was just really fed up with all the dehumanization by that time. You know what I mean? But I'm glad I was actually on a different trajectory in my mind at that time, though, and thought ahead of time end up beating that case, which I was innocent of in the first place. But that just go to show, you know what I mean? Like y'all see, like that probable cause he wrote on me. That was that whole thing. But there's a lot of people they do this too. Fabricate something that don't have nothing. Like that came out this. He had to sit down and just think of how to argue this probable cause. Like it was a fantasy world he created. You know what I mean? He made it seem like he was so polite and oh, you're just causing too much noise in the back and we don't want you to disrupt the courtroom. Like none of this conversation ever happened. But this is what they do all the time. You know what I mean? They fabricate a lot of these stories. And this is why the Black Panther Party said the pig, that's why we call them pigs. They masquerade as the victims, even though that they were the ones that provoked the whole situation. You know what I mean? All he had to do is go in there and get up my paperwork and bring it back to me. That's it. None of that stuff would have even happened. You know what I mean? Even when I try to reason with him, like, look, man, I ain't even trying to cause no problem. He cut me off and escalated it. You know what I mean? So, but these are the type of things we should keep in mind when we hear stuff on the news and stuff about different cases and stuff, because we find out oftentimes it's fabricated. You know what I mean? Any see Liz about to want to say something?
Yeah, well, that was actually what I did remember to write something down, and it was about exactly what you're talking about. Like the two main stories that have happened recently, the Tortuguita one and the Tyree Nichols one. Both of those have been fabricated and been proven to have been fabricated.
Right.
The I don't know if I sent you that video, but there's literally a video of a cop saying, dude, you fucked your own guy up, when
Right.
they're about Tortuguita in the forest defenders in Atlanta. And
Yeah.
then with Tyree, it was, of course, the first 5 officers got arrested right off rip. But then that Hemphill, the white officer, I believe he falsified the report, and now there's like 7 more people that are being even more are being investigated as well. So it's just,
Yeah.
it's normal. That's exactly what they do. So again, it goes back to that same thing that you and Sister Veronica talk about all the time, is that like they call, civilians criminals or whatever you want to call us, you know what I mean? But in reality, they're the worst criminals than us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I it just amazes me that like how so many people still like some come on the news and people are repeated immediately after the police make a statement and stuff. I don't do that stuff no more. I might have did that years ago, but it's just so much, and the stuff that personally happened to me and personally seen, like I take the opposite always. I'm like, oh yeah, he probably fabricated that shit.
Mhm.
Like I
Right.
think opposite now, you know what I mean? Because I just seen it so many times, so many circumstances, and then when it happened to me, number of times I was like, yeah, you can't never believe these motherfuckers. Like they like habitual liars. Like that's part of they profession is the lie about her.
Right.
You know
Right.
what I mean?
Like I was listening to some of the other earlier chapters today, and like Lobo, I think it was, and it might have been you, Shay, I'm not sure. But they were talking about, like, for example, like um child services. If you discipline your child, you have child services in your house all the time, but then you look at juvenile systems and like how they treat kids, and it's disgusting. It's just the hypocrisy of the whole of the whole system is just so wild, and we know that it's not for rehabilitation, and we know that it starts in the schools and all that stuff, the school to prison pipeline, all that stuff. But it's just like I can't remember specifics about what they were talking about, but like, you know, um, you know, I don't know if like kids were getting beat up, or if they weren't being fed right, or what exactly it was, but like that's exactly how it is, or just being locked up at early ages. Because I know Shay, I remember you were saying that you got locked up at what, like 14 or something like that.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
and that's how, and what was it? Maybe it was the church that you went to, the school that you went to.
Yeah, Catholic Church.
Yeah,
A
yeah,
Ca-
yeah.
It was a Catholic home.
Okay. Yep. And so it was going back to the boys' school stuff, and like, everything was, everything is all about keeping everybody in line, and indoctrinating us is really what it all comes down to. Or keeping people at their lowest and dehumanizing people in the prison system, if we're talking about like juvenile systems, or the obviously the whole prison system itself.
Yeah. Yeah, and the part you probably referring to when I was talking about in my boys' school days, how they was beating up the kids. Like they was like, imagine a grown man my size taking a 14-year-old kid, picking them up in the air and slam them in
Yeah,
the,
yeah.
you know what I mean? Like that's what I witnessed in there. That was like my first 2 weeks at the juvenile center. It was supposed to be like the receiving area that tells you which juvenile prison you gonna go to. But yeah, and it was like my first week or two, like I witnessed this dude get slammed up and roughed up, hog tied, and I'm over here like, what the hell? Like if any parent did this to their kid, they would be locked up for child abuse. You dig what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
here, this stuff was in boys' school, and none of us knew our rights, so we couldn't challenge this stuff. You dig what I'm saying? And they got away with it numerous times when I was in there. And yeah, it's just a very brutal system, even more so in some ways to juveniles, because juveniles can't defend themselves. By the time I went to prison, at least some of the guys started learning the law. You know, you see in my case, I started learning the law and even beating cases and all kind of stuff. So I was able to defend myself legally on certain manners. But that's the only protection a lot of us had in prison, is that once we learned the law, we could bust their head with $50,000 lawsuits, $100,000 lawsuits. And I've seen some of those. Like people actually bust their head for lawsuits, and this is how they got their dues, and the prison had to treat them different and stuff. You know what I'm saying? But in juvenile, nah, nobody knows the law. Nobody knows no way to protect themselves. So the stuff that goes on in these juvenile facilities is very sadistic, brutal, heinous. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, I really think like even these juvenile systems should be shut down, man, because it's not really helping nobody in there. They make it way worse. You know what I mean?
Very true.
Go ahead, Che.
You know, speaking of juveniles, I had my share of that, man. For many years as a kid, man, I was always being put in different juvenile detentions. And my crimes basically was that I used to run away from home because there was a lot of domestic violence going on in the household. And I just couldn't tolerate it. So I had to run. And the only place I run to was the streets. You know, even though there was violence in the street, but it's a different type of violence. And it wasn't my mother involved, you know, so it was okay with me, you know. But after I graduated from juvenile, I finally made it to the grown-ups. And I went to prison at 14. And the funny thing, I'm gonna blow everybody's mind right now. First of all, I went to county jail, and in county jail, you go to what is called a preliminary hearings, and preliminary hearings are usually held in criminal courts, not in Supreme Courts, in criminal courts, at least in the city, in New York. So about 4 or 5 weeks of being detained in jail, you know, in the county jail, I finally was able to go see a judge. And I didn't even listen to what the judge was saying. You know, I had 2 court appointed lawyers, you know, who came to the jail, to the court with me. And all of a sudden, all I heard was dismissal. And I asked the lawyer, what's happening? He said, your case is dismissed. You can go home. I said, what? So I walked out of court, and I took the elevator, went downstairs. And just as I was going outside of the door, police came and grabbed me. And I said, what you grabbing me for? And they grabbed me and they took me back in. And they said, you being charged with murder. I said, well, what you talking about? It was just dismissed. No, you're being charged with murder. It was crazy. The second time it happened 2 weeks later, I went back to court. And this is no exaggeration. I went back to court and the same thing happened to me. You know what they call that? Double jeopardy. But double jeopardy occurred to me twice. But being that I was a kid, 14 years old, I didn't know, you know, all I knew was being detained most of my life, but I didn't know nothing about no law. So I let it be. And then my second dismissal, they finally decided to transfer it over to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court would take care of the case. And after that, there was no more double jeopardies or none of that stuff. It was gone. And I was charged with murder in the first degree. And for 11 months, you know, 5 or 6 months later, they talked about formulating a trial, you know, and I realized one thing about being in county jails, that they keep you there long enough so that you could take a bid, you could take a plea, you know, and that's what is one of the reasons why they keep people so long detained in these county jails, because they get tired of it. And then now they said, man, listen, give me whatever you want to give me and let me get the fuck out of here. And so that's what happened. You know, they came, at first it was murder in the first degree. I was facing the electric chair, but after 11 months, you know, and it seemed that I wasn't saying I'm guilty, they came forth and they gave me a plea of 20 to life. Oh no, 10 to 20 plea, sorry. And I took it, because I was tired of it. You know, maybe if I would have went to court, to trial, maybe I could have won. I don't know. But the only thing they had was a knife, and they had my fingerprints on it. But that was good enough evidence to, you know, to find me guilty. You know, so I took a plea and I went upstate. But I just said all that to say this, man. That court-appointed lawyers, they get a flat pay. You know, the courts pay them to take a case, so they don't give a fuck, man. They take your case and they play with it until you decide to take a plea. And once you decide to take a plea, they get rid of it, because either way they're not getting no more than what they're gonna get. You know, it's not like an attorney that you hire, a private attorney. That's different. But court-appointed attorneys, forget it, man. That's a no. You know, and so that's all I want to say. You know, it reminds me of when you was going through all your procedures, man. I said, wow, man, it sounds like Che. You know, me and you share the same a lot of common features. But you know something? Me, you, Brother George Jackson, Brother Malcolm X, we all share a common features, man. Yeah, we all went to this, you know, to hell, man. You know?
Right.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Appreciate that, Elder. Yeah,
It
I
really,
just
before I forget, it just points out, oh, sorry. What you guys are both talking about is, it points out that it's a class war right there. Like, people that are in jail because they can't bond out and end up taking pleas and all that stuff, it's predominantly the lower class that doesn't have the money to bond out, or has to use the public pretenders and etc., whatever the case may be, and then don't necessarily have the ability or the knowledge to do the things that you did to, or the time necessarily, you know, to figure out how to get the fuck out of there.
Right. Yeah. I would say this, even about paid lawyers. That's why I put that one paid lawyer in there. And I spoke on my
Yeah.
lawyer that I had when I first got locked up. She was a paid lawyer. See, the thing, I've never said I was innocent of this shit. You dig what I'm saying? I was innocent of that situation I just read, though. You know, I don't have no problem tell you the stuff that I actually did and the stuff that I actually did not do. You dig what I'm saying? But the case I went to prison for, like even my first attorney, she would never come to visit me. You dig what I'm saying? And
Wow.
that's normal. Like they take your money and they feel like, we got your money now. We just do what the hell we want to do. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And we don't
Yeah.
even need to abreast of what's going on. The lawyer I talked about in this case, that was fighting, they took over my PC case and the new case I caught in there, that bullshit case I caught with over that deputy dickhead motherfucker.
That's what he is, brother. That's what he is, the dickhead.
Straight up. But I was pointing out with this paid lawyer, and mind you, this brother's past and stuff, though, you know what I mean? They got me that lawyer, Luck. It's about 2 years he's been dead. But he looked out for me. He got me a lawyer and stuff, you know what I mean? And I'm thinking this lawyer gonna be a good lawyer because this was one of his personal lawyers and stuff. You know what I'm saying? But I started realizing early on, this dude was full of shit. You know what I'm saying? Like I didn't get no representation, and this is a paid lawyer. I didn't get no real representation from my PCR. That's why I put that issue in there. It's like you're trying to get into a college, but you don't submit your high school transcripts. You know what I mean? Like you're not gonna get in no college. You know what I'm saying? And you not submit your high school transcripts and stuff. Like they need to have something to go off of to even admit you into college. But that's what he did to me. He didn't even submit my trial transcripts. He didn't call none of my witnesses. My appellate attorney, who actually was a good attorney, I feel like she did a good job on my case, even though I personally wrote the law that I told her to look into. So I pretty much helped her out. You know what I mean? But I thought she wrote a good brief and stuff, but she wanted to come to court and testify in my behalf. She felt like I should got 9 years knocked off my sentence, which would have left me with 30 years. You dig what I'm saying? Because she's the one that studied the law, researched the law that I was telling her about, and put out the brief. He didn't even call my appellate attorney to come in and testify on my behalf, which I could have actually got 9 years knocked off my sentence if he would have called her and she would have came in and argued for my side. You dig what I'm saying? Like, dude did nothing. You dig what I'm saying? But in Indiana, and I can't speak for everywhere, Indiana, I can't name one attorney right now. I've been trying to get a attorney from one of my guys that's in prison. He's actually in prison for something he didn't do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've been having a hard time with that. I'm waiting on him to call me and let me know who he got, because I heard he got somebody now. He didn't tell me he was going to be doing this. We were supposed to be trying to find somebody, but I can't name one person. We've been trying to, and he got the money. He got the money, but we can't. It was like everybody we looked up is like, man, it's just foul records and stuff. And everybody we know had experiences with them as foul people. They took their money and stuff and did do shit for them. That's why I bring this all up to say this. That's why one thing I think eventually the Rainbow Coalition is going to have to develop as another program is the legal workshop program. Like, people have to know their rights and know how to stand up for themselves. I remember watching Fred Hampton, and they used to do mock trials. You know what I'm saying? Where Fred Hampton had to stand up for himself and speak up for himself and defend himself. I think we need that type of education, because when you go in the courtroom, you go in there with the where the law already acts like you know the law. You dig what I'm saying? And if you don't know the law, well, hey, that's your fault. You dig what I'm saying? That's how they do you in there. So I really think like eventually that's gonna have to be one of the programs that I feel like the Rainbow Coalition can provide for the members, rank and file members, is teaching people the law, basic law, but also I'm big on like mock trials and because eventually, you know, as we grow, just like back in the days with the original Black Panthers, Young Lords, and all them, they start coming at them with some false ass, trumped up cases and stuff that a lot of them had to fight. You know what I'm saying? Me, I'm comfortable because I wish they would come with a bullshitted case because I'm gonna walk out that courtroom making them look real stupid. You know what I'm saying? Because I feel like I can definitely represent myself better than a lawyer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's only because I study it and I know how to argue my case dealing with the courtroom and studying the law and stuff. But I think if we equip each other, you know, get a team of lawyers that does trainings with us and stuff, it would prepare a lot of us where it put us in a strong position where they know if they come at us, this generation of the Second Rainbow Coalition, well, y'all just bought that bottle of beer because we gonna all keep on walking out these courtrooms and making you motherfuckers looking stupid as we build a movement and use this as a platform. But it's also a way to protect ourselves and be a deterrent to all these false COINTELPRO type of strategies they have. You dig what I'm saying?
Yeah. And I agree with you, brother. I agree with you, man, because we definitely have to know at least a little bit of it, man, because the situation is getting worse. You know, we talk about the Black Panthers back in the days. They knew the law. That's why they used to carry guns, because they knew, man, they weren't their right to carry guns. But today, the gun laws are all out. You know, there's so many laws on that. It's crazy. But nevertheless, we should. At least fundamentally, we should know something about law, to prepare ourselves in case they raid our house, man, break down our door and arrest us for some fabricated bullshit. We could at least beat them in the courtroom.
Right.
Have you heard about the podcast that came out, Alphabet Boys, recently? It's about how the FBI already they infiltrated the Colorado BLM movement.
I didn't hear about that.
There's a Democracy Now episode. There's a Democracy Now but I can share it with you. But there's a podcast. I think there's only like 5 episodes on it, but there's like actual recorded I don't know if it's like voice or whatever, but you could hear him talking and like, this is special agent, blah, 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 talking about blah, blah, blah. But the guy, I want to say his name was Zeb Hall. Like, this person set him up to like buy him a gun, and it was all the feds behind it.
Wow. Hey, I'll tell you this. I know you probably heard about it, but in 2020, when I was with the New African Black Panther Party, we was infiltrated. We got one person that we can prove with paperwork, and that's Malik Keith Washington. He was the editor for the Washington Bay View. You can Google him if you're watching this on YouTube right now. Google his name. He is Pig. Well, at least a CI, you know what I mean? He was working with the FBI for 10 years. He was the Minister of Labor for the New African Black Panther Party for a period of time and stuff. But we got paperwork on him. But the ones that we don't got paperwork, man, I can tell you some crazy stories. This is another person I'm about to put out here. Ignacio. Ignacio. This dude was so sophisticated. He was with the Brown Panthers when I was down there. It's Ignacio De La Soul. If he's on Facebook still under that motherfucker's a pig. This dude pulls. We was down there in Florida, he pulls out a listening device reader. Long story short, it was his whole thing was trying to make me feel this organization that we was working with wasn't to be trusted. You dig what I'm saying? And he was mad that I set up a workshop with them. But when I did, I realized these was some solid comrades. You dig what I'm saying? I was like, boy, I'm glad I went in and set this up. But this is what the pigs do. They try to divide us against other revolutionary groups and stuff. So long story short, I had a meeting at this workshop. Everybody knew about. I got up, and mind you, this is an Airbnb that these comrades rented out. You dig what I'm saying? I'm about to go to a room to jump on the central committee meeting and stuff, right? He gets up with me and follows me to the room. I thought that was like strange. So when we get into the bedroom, he pulls out a bug reader. And I'm like, he's been my security dude and stuff, living in me and my wife's house and stuff. You know what I mean? So he pulls out this bug reader and he's like, shh, he's checking for listening devices. And I'm like, man, this is some sophisticated ass shit. So he goes around the room, mind you, I'm talking about literally 10 seconds. I ain't gonna say 10 seconds, probably like 20 seconds. He's going around the room and he hits to the front of the bed and he finds a bug, a listening device. You know what I'm saying? So he looks at me, I'm looking at him, and I'm like, yeah, motherfucker, I know there's something in there. You know what I mean? But I'm thinking the whole time, motherfucker, you planted this shit in there. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And because nobody's going to go straight and find the bug in no 10 damn seconds. I mean, 20, 30 seconds. Like, that's some movie type of shit. In real life, they take hours to find a bug in a house. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So that was one of my first experience dealing with like some high-tech COINTELPRO shit. You know what I'm saying? This dude, I could tell so many different stories about the shit he was doing that just had my radars going off. And eventually I was like, this motherfucker right here is something. You know what I'm saying? This ain't no regular revolutionary at all. This motherfucker is a high-tech pig for real. And to this day, like, nobody's gonna convince me that motherfucker ain't a part of some intelligence unit. You know what I'm saying? Because he did shit that I've never seen people do out here. You know what I mean? So I say all that to say that we should always be vigilant. The people around us, especially the ones, because he tried to used to get me in criminal shit too. You know what I'm saying? I'm a felon. I can't be having access to guns like that. You know what I'm saying? Long story short, without saying a whole lot of stuff, but he wanted me to go to a pawn shop down in Florida. He's like, oh, comrade, you down in Florida, so they ain't gonna know about your criminal background. You can go to a pawn shop and buy a gun down here. You know what I'm saying? Like, man, I come to find out Florida got one of the most strictest laws on guns and shit dealing with felons. You know what I'm saying? Always encouraged me to do shit and to put me in different situations, either to be against a group or to put myself in a situation that I was going to catch a felony and go back to the joint. You know what I'm saying? So these type of things we definitely got to pay attention to, because this is what these agent provocateurs be on. Go ahead, Che.
You know, you said so much in reference to, you know, years ago when I was doing article work, you know, and a lot of us were indicted as a result of the rebellion. We had an office in New York, and we was functioning out of that office. And there was this white dude that came out of nowhere, man. I mean, he came out of nowhere. He even had a vouch to prove that he was in a joint. And I said, oh God. So that, you know, I accepted it. I went along with it. We started smoking weed together. We snort a little coke together. And then we used to go to Buffalo, man, to do a lot of article work. And do you know that when it came down to full indictments being, you know, this dude just totally disappeared, you know, and somebody came to me and said, Che, you know something? I said, what? Red Murphy. Yeah, what's happening with Murphy? Where is he? I don't see him. You don't see him because he never existed. The name in itself was bullshit. This was a CIA dude, and plus he worked with the FBI, and he was with you all each time. I said, "Oh shit," you know. So from then on, I really was on my P's and Q's. Now, have you ever heard of Edward Snowden?
Yeah, Edward Snowden. Yeah,
Edward Snowden. He wrote a book that I'm trying to get now. Nowhere to hide. He ain't got
yeah,
nowhere. He's right now in Russia. He can't
yeah.
hide. But yet he put so much out there, so much information out there pertaining to what we call COINTELPRO, as quiet
Right.
as that, you know.
Right.
And he talked about how the CIA, how they put all kinds of gadgets in people. You know, our cellulars are coming out now are very monitored. You know,
Yeah,
everything we say is monitored. You know, so we definitely have to be careful. Not that I mean, I'm going to call them a pig whether they like it or not. They're pigs,
right,
but
right.
can't go so far because they could use what you say. They could use it against you and turn it all upside down. And before you know it, you're in the penitentiary. You don't even know why. I mean, look at Mumia. Mumia is one of a good example. You know, he never committed a crime. He never really shot that dude. They shot him. They killed that police. And then they turn around, boom, and placed it on him. And they got
Right.
police right now, man. They pick you up and put shit in your pockets. How can you prove that it wasn't yours?
Right.
Oh, wait a minute, you got drugs. No. How can you prove it? And then
Yeah.
talking about the law, we definitely need to do that.
Yeah. And you make a good point. Like, well, me and you both always be vigilant. You dig what I'm saying? The people that come in your circle. You dig what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely.
Don't I respect all my comrades. I stand with all my comrades. Most of my comrades, I get the benefit of the doubt, but I'm always vigilant still. You know what I'm saying?
You got to.
You never know. Like, this dude was my security dude, like my bodyguard when I was down in Florida. And I trusted him initially until I just started realizing, like, this motherfucker is not right. And my wife started seeing the same thing. You know what I mean? Go ahead, Sister Anna.
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned that because it's always the one that you don't suspect, but respect. And I say that in a sense because I have done some research and looked and noticed that the same person that was in the same circle of Dr. King was also part of Minister Malcolm X security guard and another leader. I forgot. I'm sorry. But it's kind of crazy. It's kind of crazy. And people really need to do their research like what you said that doesn't connect, but also you have to look at those who are in position, high position, and try to protect their position by re-victimizing victims who are not in the central committee or circle. So this way they can take the spotlight off of them and shining on others.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
We
I know.
got to realize that we are fighting a war.
Yeah.
We're fighting a war, and our war is to overthrow the U.S. government. And they know it, so I need not even, And so, if you're trying to take my money that I got in my pocket, what am I going to do? I'm going to defend myself, and that's the same thing with them. They're going to defend themselves by any means necessary. COINTELPRO today is highly sophisticated.
Right.
You're right. You're right.
Absolutely. What you just share, Alyssa?
She shared the link.
That's the podcast of the alphabet that
I'm gonna copy this.
I'm gonna try to see if I can find the one with disconnecting myself.
Okay. I'm gonna put that in my notes. Check that out. But yeah, I didn't expect the conversation go this way, but I think it's necessary to talk about stuff like this because sometimes I think we get too comfortable and don't realize like revolution is no matter what they say to them, it's always going to be illegal because it's a threat to their privilege, their institutions, their way of maintaining the status quo. You know what I'm saying? I was just reading doing the audio at work this week of Seize the Time by Bobby Seale and stuff, you know what I mean? And Bobby Seale talking about how they saw they survival programs is a threat. You know what I'm saying? Think about that. Feeding the kids, clothing, daycares, the liberation school, you know what I'm saying? All of that was a threat to the system. You know what I'm saying? And they did everything to ransack that and to tear that down because we're showing people a different way of life. Like we're showing them even to the basic level of us doing community programs, is building, trying to build survival programs within the community and developing that network of dual and contending power where we're building institutions in opposition to the government and their institutions. You know what I mean? They're gonna always look at it as a threat because we're showing that the new is being born within the old. You know what I mean? And
But you're
that,
right, brother.
yeah, that's part of the struggle. That's part of that class struggle because we're showing a different model of how we can relate to each other as people. We're showing unity and solidarity. Like even doing this, the Second Rainbow Coalition, they hate the fact that we came together and formed the Second Rainbow Coalition. We might not have the same type of national power at this time like the original one, Rainbow Coalition, or like they was putting it down in Chicago, but the fact that we're coming out and teaching people about this example, and I and I would say this, I've been witnessing because being a chairman and the Second Rainbow Coalition and knowing a lot of the leaders around the country, best believe people paying attention to our movement and stuff. It's a lot of people that's gravitating back to the original Black Panther Party. You know what I'm saying? Because we a movement that actually reflect what the original young patriots, young lords, original Black Panther Party was about. And we're demonstrating that. You know what I'm saying? We not out here just toting guns and stuff like that and thinking that's all it is. You know what I'm saying? I know Sister Edna speak to that.
Yes, indeed. And you know what? I'm glad that you say that because, like you, brother Kwame and Chaz, I look up to my father, what he did, but you know what? He didn't have a group of people. And it was so sad that what he went through, he had to go through by himself because a lot of people had cowered out when he was trying to form an after school program for kids and to see a grown man, my dad, break down and cry like a little baby after hearing that one of his students, one of the kids in our area got gunned down by gun violence or in a fatal police shooting, have taken him so back where he felt that it was his assigned duty to do something very quick, and that is to throw out the housing authority out of a basement where they often change their clothes to their uniform, and got them kicked out of our building to form a daycare program for the kids. And he had a lot of vendors to donate, like machines, Patman, I'm sorry, it was a long time, Patman, and vending machines, and give us food. When this man did this by himself, went to the different stores and got food for the kids who, came home and really didn't have nothing to do but to hang out. And I never forget, and I'm saying this one thing, I never forget, I was coming back, I vaguely remember from somewhere, and to see these detectives, oh my God, who wrongfully arrested these young Black and Latino young, I call them boys because they're young, in a hallway and threw a substance that looked like a white powder ball, something in a brown something in front of them and say, look what we found. I say, that's wrong. And they told me to mind my business, where they was gonna jump me, and I was like, this is crazy. This is outrageous. But to see the crookedness that even happened, that in the area where I live in Spanish Harlem, is real, and it haven't gone away. But it comes down to the fact that we as revolutionaries will always be challenged, because what we doing is not controlled by them, and
Right.
it's taking away money from them,
Yeah.
and it's also taking away what the public see good by them, which is not good, but just more of stardom, being a great big star to the world, which they the most crookedest people on earth, as we know. And I applaud what we're doing. And it just take what's in your divine power in your heart to say and do what is enough, and that you're not going to tolerate it. And you're going to stand up for the people.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm gonna close this out. I know we've been on here 2 hours with that last comment from the sister, because that's what it's about, though. Being the example, educating the people. One thing Fred Hampton and the Black Panther Party always used to say all the time is most people learn through observation and participation. And we not the biggest movement yet. We growing. I know I got some good news for the comrades tomorrow for our meeting and stuff for the Second Rainbow Coalition. We'll probably be bringing in another group, probably a very nice size group that's going to be possibly joining us. I'm not going to say it on here until it's official, you know what I mean? But it's another one of the rainbow. We're going to fill in one of those other colors if everything work out. But we're going to keep on growing. It's a protracted struggle, you know what I mean? And sometimes the influence that we projecting is going to help guide this movement across the country as we start to coalesce and come together and stuff as we grow, you know what I mean? And I've already been seeing that across the country with a lot of different leaders. Man, all the different leaders of all the different movements, they follow a number of us, you know what I mean? And sometimes when I be getting they friend requests, I be like, oh, okay, I know who that is, you know what I mean? But they paying attention. They paying attention. That's why I accept them. I accept the friend requests, even though it be some of them that got fucked up views and reactionary views or views. I be like, okay, set. You know what I mean? Because now you about to be start to learn through observation. You gonna part and eventually maybe participation. So some of them I hope to win over to our movement. You dig what I'm saying? And some have been won over. You dig what I'm saying? So, but anyway, with that said, comrades, I'm glad everybody jumped on here. I always appreciative to my co-host, Alyssa. She always on here with me, holding me down. The Elder Che, Sister Anna. Sister Anna is the one that initiate this. I'm letting the YouTube world know, like, it was Sister Anna that first gave me a call several months ago. She was like, brother, we need to start a book club. And I was like, you know what? I've been thinking about that anyway. So credit goes to Sister Anna for getting the jump start of this. You know what I mean? I just try to pull all the pieces together and make this happen. But yeah, I've been enjoying this, and I'm glad a lot of people is getting out of my book. I really appreciate it.
I enjoy it too. And brother, thank you for this project. You're doing a wonderful job. And I see that this is one of many other projects leading to this great work. And this is just one phase right here, though we getting close to the end of this book, but it's not the end of this project, because I did share other ideas to keep the revolution of this project going on. And it's just come on to me. So I thank you, brother, for
the ancestor guiding you to write this important message, this book, and giving it and delivering it to the world, in which I'm also, going to further when I go out of the country, and you know exactly where I'm going, so we can still connect that way and present to the people in that area.
Yeah, hey, and I got a PDF. I think I sent you. You already got the PDF, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah, give it to whoever you want over there. You know what I mean?
Okay, definitely. But definitely, I'm going to speak to some people down there. I'm just waiting for my passport, but I'm going to do a whole lot of stuff right now. I'm just waiting. So
Yeah,
I'm going to definitely connect with you some more about that as I'm getting closer to leave, for a week or so, and get back with you on that.
absolutely. All right, comrades. With that said, all power to the people, and I see y'all Sunday, Sister Anna Che. I'm thinking you're gonna be on maybe a listen too.
Oh, good. Well, we need moderators. So come on, Chad, be one of our moderators, and whoever else is interested and who's watching, come on. It's going to be fun. The Sunday Fun Crew going to keep this going.
I got my prize from Leslie today too. I think
Oh,
my wife
really? Can I
hung it up.
see it?
For her. I think she
Oh.
hung it for her. I don't know where it's at.
Oh, okay. I saw it. It's beautiful. So if you're having, I'm sure brother Kwame gonna post a picture. But I mean, we got some real talented folks here, writers and authors. I mean, this is real talent, and this is a continuation of what the Panthers have been doing, expressing their work in many different ways and forms that the people appreciate.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, y'all have a good night, and
Okay.
Thank you, brother and
see ya.
sisters.
Same
Absolutely.
here, brother Chad and
Take
Kwame.
care.
You want
More
You
power.
want me to
Okay.
You want me to count down?
Yeah, if you want to, yep.
Okay. All right. I just want to say thank you, y'all. This has been awesome. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Black Power.
Black power.
Okay.